Thank you for the intro, Jamie, and welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm glad that you're here. I'm gonna share my screen, and please, first of all, I just want a confirmation from anyone when you are able to see my first slide.
You can see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joe. So today we're going to get together. We're getting together to actually do, for me to share with you an overview on Jira Advanced Roadmap. I'm just going to bore you with 4 slides, and then we're going to go into a hands-on, which is really the where hopefully you'll get a lot of value if you use the tool already, meaning Jira Advanced Roadmap. Hopefully you discover a few things, and if you haven't or you're new to the tool, this will open up your eyes to hopefully possibilities of things that you can do with Jira Advanced Roadmap. So I'm just going to move into the contents of the slides. We'll discuss what is Jira Advanced Roadmap. We, at the high level, discuss some of the benefits, and then we'll deep dive into a hands-on overview. Because this first session, the intro workshop, contains so much information, I'd like to go, if it's okay with y'all, start from end to end and provide the entire overview so that folks can get a comprehensive view of what the tool functionality and features are. And if you have any questions, jot that down in the chat window or in a good old sticky note. And towards the end of the presentation, we'll provide a buffer time to ask Q&A, to ask questions, so that I can get the ability, I have the ability to actually complete the entire overview. Note that I believe it's next week and the following week, Scrum Master of the Universe and we're going to be hosting additional sessions which are more pointed. Those will be interactive. So if we don't address your questions today, please join one of those 2 sessions. They are going to be more pointed, and those are going to be more, Q&A driven. So you're welcome to join those as well. So without further overview, let's see. Just going to move on to what is JAR. So JAR, which is short for Jira Advanced Roadmap, is a tool that is included in Jira Premium, Jira Enterprise, and I believe in Jira Data Center. And for the latter 2, whether you are on the cloud or you're using the on-prem version of Jira, it should be there by default at no additional cost besides the licensing that you're paying for those products. And they used to charge separately long ago when they first launched the tool under the branding of Jira Plans, but they did away with that model a number of years ago, and they decided to include that functionality right into the tool. JAR is a great tool to do planning, PI planning, release planning, even sprint planning, if you will. But besides the planning elements of it, once you're done with the planning, you can actually use Jira Advanced Roadmap very effectively to monitor and track the execution of that plan throughout the product lifecycle, the project lifecycle. And it does a great job at providing not only visuals that allows people to see where we're at, dependencies from across teams, as well as highlight risks, so that rather than knowing late in the game during a product lifecycle that there are some hiccups, the tool actually will attempt to raise flags as you move along. And I will showcase some of those examples when we get into the hands-on. Incredibly useful for the planning, but beyond the planning during the execution stage. Also, JAR, or Jira Advanced Roadmap, shouldn't be confused with other offerings. I've worked with organizations where I suggest that if they have used Jira Advanced Roadmap, and there used to be, or there still is, a product called Roadmap, which actually is freely available in any free account of Jira in the cloud. And Roadmap is really a watered down version of Jira Advanced Roadmap. Contains some of the basic fundamentals, but it's not the same. Luckily, Atlassian renamed Roadmap. Now it's called Timeline, just like they renamed Jira Plans to Jira Advanced Roadmap. And so we're just going to focus today in Jira Advanced Roadmap, but I figure I just do a call out between Roadmap and also Jira Align, which is a separate beast altogether. For that one, it's a separate licensing, a total integration effort to integrate it into your Jira instance. As opposed to Jira Advanced Roadmap, you have it there. It's if you have an enterprise version of Jira, you don't have to ask the admin to install it or configure it. It's part of the tool. It's highly integrated and ready to go. After we're done with this presentation, when you go to your own company's instance, you should be able to use it right away if you care to use it. Moving to the next slide, the benefits from using JAR, sorry, is that it aggregates the data from multiple teams, but it provides you a view of the Jira artifacts, and I will showcase that in the tool. It also provides you a Microsoft project-like Gantt chart view, and don't think waterfall versus agile. Think about optics that allows people who are not familiarized with your project or they're not agilists to get familiarized with where we at in the context of time, right? You're talking to VPs and directors, folks that are not in the engineering or the agile world, but they care to know where we at. That information is very meaningful and easy to digest from Jira and provide the optics to your via Jira Advanced Roadmap, whether you do it directly in Roadmap or in Confluence. And I will show that integration sample as well. The tool itself, Jira Advanced Roadmap, or JAR, it's not really a tool for a particular role. I have Scrum Masters that devour the tool, release managers, product managers, engineering managers, and most of all, recently I have a number of VPs, whether it's VP of product management, VP of engineering, that want to learn to leverage the tool so that they can get, it's the same information, but now they get the optics that they need to, so that from their perspective, they can use that information to better manage expectations. So it's really a tool that is meant for any and all roles within the space. Lastly, I will say that the information that you have in your advanced roadmap, as I mentioned earlier, is great for PIs planning, for release planning, but also to drive SOS meetings, Scrum meetings, any status meetings or refinement sessions. It's a great tool to leverage instead of having to buy additional plugins. And so to that note, I recently worked with a client here in the Bay Area that they were using or buying an external plugin and not realizing that this tool existed already. And now they have reverted and started using Jira Advanced Roadmap. And I will encourage any of you who are not using it or is considering on buying a plugin within your company, try the tool. And once you graduate, meaning once you exceed any of the functionalities, then at that point you can consider another tool, and that way it saves you money. It's actually performance-wise, it doesn't have a hit on Jira that I'm aware of in terms of performance. So worthwhile looking at the tool after this presentation. And without further ado, let's just go right into the hands-on. So I am going to end this slide. And forgive me if you see me shifting my eyes down, so that I have another screen down below that allows me to see some of the topics that I want to make sure I'm covering here. I am right now presenting a Jira. This is my Jira instance. I created this with a mock-up project. And while it is a mock-up project, it does have in my Jira Premium Cloud Edition, it does have all the elements that you will have in a real project. Meaning you have stories, you have tasks, you have sprints. In some environments, people create a bunch of sprints into the future when they're trying to forecast and release. You have a product backlog, and things are prioritized. And also have an active sprint. And notice that in this UI, there is really not a mention of Jira Advanced Roadmap. So that's the first question that people ask me. It's like, how do I access Jira Advanced Roadmap? It so happens that the product was released originally under Jira Plans. And then when later was rebranded as Jira Advanced Roadmap, Atlassian just left the old branding, never changed. So if you, and when you get back to your company's Jira instance, if you see Jira Plans listed up there, Jira Advanced Roadmap and Jira Plans are one and the same. Basically, you just click on the drop-down. Now, if you have attempted to use or you use Jira Advanced Roadmap before, you will keep a bookmark of the projects that you have seen recently. But if it is your first time, you normally will just see the middle three options here. And for the purpose of our workshop today, I'm just going to go into the sample of what does it take to create your first instance, your first view of Jira Plans. And basically, you add a friendly name. For example, if my organization, the product is called Ninja, so I just call it Ninja Plans. Whatever friendly name that you can identify your plans or your project, your product, you should do so there. Next, you define the access, and you have two options here. You either can make the plan private, meaning only you and those who you grant access to can see the plan, or you make it open, which means that anybody who has access to your Jira instance across the company can actually view your plan. Normally, I choose to share data transparently, so my preference is to leave it open. And lastly, the last thing you do here is that you define your issue sources. And by issue sources, it's asking you as the person creating the plan, define where you want the data to, where does it comes from. And you get three options. The three options are limited to boards, and that could be one or many boards. So you're not restricted to a single board. Neither you're restricted to the boards from your team. You can have boards, if you're collaborating with 5 teams, you can add the teams, those 5 teams boards into this view, hence aggregating the data in. So for example, in this case, I have 3 teams. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say the OCT team, which is optimized, and the optimized agile team. I am gonna select another team, and so on and so on. You keep adding teams, boards, if you wanna build this view strictly on boards. However, you have the ability to exclusively or share in a shared environment, add projects as well if you want to. So for example, if I from one or more teams, again, optimized agile team, I can add that project, and I can add multiple projects as I need data from. So in the instance that you have a product, which is not unlikely, whereby you have multiple teams contributing to that product, and they have their own Jira instance, this is a great way of aggregating all that data from those multiple teams into a single view. So you can consolidate and track progress and track dependencies and risks of those teams. The last option, which is actually is called filters. And so you can define one or more filters. And by the way, you can combine. They are not multiply exclusive. So I can have a view that is built for boards and projects and filters. Normally, I build the views that I build, usually using boards, because it brings me this, if my team is using Scrum, it brings me the Scrum related artifacts, such as the sprints information, and projects as well, so that I get all the artifacts, whether epics, story, task box, any custom issue types. Both of them will bring the same, but this is at the project level. It doesn't care about what the board is filtering. It just grabs all the information from the project. So, and once you're done, you can create exclusion rules optionally. All you do is just click on the create button here in the far right, and that's it. That's all it takes. I created a view already, and I have it open in this tab. So I'm just going to switch to that tab. And so you end up creating a view such as the one that you see in my screen. Now, I'm going to dissect or break down this view before deep diving into a lot of the functionality, so you get a sense of how is this view composed. On my left here, you have Jira, what I describe as Jira artifacts. These are epics, and if you click on the epics, it will show you a hierarchy of the stories that are associated with those epics. And you see not just stories, any story level issue type. So if you have custom issue types that you created, as long as they're associated via the epic link field to their respective epics, it will show the hierarchy. It will also show you any orphans, meaning by orphans, I mean in many of the teams that have matured enough in their release cycles, they want to make sure that all stories are accounted for in some feature, so that we know that story, that effort from engineering is contributing to a certain feature in our release, or features in our release. So this gives you the opportunity to find orphans. And so, for example, if I see a specific orphan down here that I know as a product manager or as an engineering manager, hey, that orphan belongs to this epic, I can just simply drag and drop that orphan into the respective epic, and it creates that link between that story and that epic. Now, you could do that in Jira, but then you have to open the story, go to the epic link field, remember what the epic name is, type it in. So rather than going through a lot of that, there's some drag and drop functionalities that you see in the Jira column here. You can also stack rank the epics or stories if you care for. So just like you would do ranking in Jira, you can do the ranking here as well. If you're a product manager, you're ranking your epics, or if you're an engineering manager and as a team, you're ranking your stories based on execution, you could do so here. You also have the ability to apply filters. So notice that I have, in my case, I'm showing epics to stories. In my hierarchy filter, I can define if I want how far down the issue types I can go. So I can literally tell the tool, show me from epics all the ways to subtasks. So if I have any of these stories that will have subtasks, they will be shown, as in the case of OCT65, where I have a subtask. I can segregate these views just to tell it, just show me stories only if you're doing, for example, sprint planning. And so the power that I'm trying to showcase here is that you have the ability to restrict or expand what issue types are you seeing in Jira Advanced Roadmap. And if you have custom issue types, as in my case here, I created this issue type called initiative, which in my mockup project represents a business container. Maybe it's a business value that lives through many releases and allows to articulate to the leadership what business value these features are contributing to. If you have custom issue types, you can actually create them, and as long as they're part of the issue source projects, they will come into Jira Advanced Roadmap with the same hierarchy. So now I have my initiatives linked to my epics, linked to my stories. And so the theme that I'm trying to illustrate here is that you have a lot of Jira related artifacts. You can use filters to actually massage the information that you are providing to your team. So a good example of that is I have 3 teams here. If I want to take the OCT team in the middle here, and I just want to have a discussion about our next release, this team happens to release on a quarterly basis. So the fixed version nomenclature that we accepted as a team is our 2024 Q2. By clicking on that release fixed version, notice that in the background, instead of having the 22 epics, now my list has shrunk to 7 epics. And that is to say that these are 7 features that are part of that release. The filters are not mutually exclusive. You can combine them. And if you play around with this in your own environment, you'll notice that you have a lot of features or filters that you can apply to in combination to yield the view that you want to see. So if I want to see things that are only in progress, again, I click on that filter and it shrinks even further just to show me the stories and the epics that are in progress. So great functionality, lots of power. The filtering doesn't require you to learn JQL. Hey, which is a plus for a lot of people who don't care to learn JQL. Now, I'm going to shift my attention here to the right pane where I'm hovering. And this is a timeline view. This provides optics in the form of a Gantt chart-like view that allows you to see the execution of artifacts on time horizon. The yellow line represents today, pretty much like in Microsoft Project, you have that line and many other project management tools that represent today. The blue line represents the fixed version. So in this instance, this represents the when we are planning to launch or release this particular set of features. And notice that if I click on the chevron, it expands and it gives you a little bit of detail. Also gives you hyperlink that takes you into viewing in Jira or filter issues by this release date. So a lot of hyperlinking that occurs here. And so everything is interconnected with Jira. Is brought to you by default. And the rest of the window is fairly clean, fairly empty. There's not meaningful data. It is not until I enable this roll-up. One of the ways that I can get Gantt charts here, if you will, is by dragging and dropping. Notice that my mouse provides me a grayish bar. So if I were to click on and drag, I can paint a timeline view, or I can use my roll-up. And my roll-up functionality, what it does is that if you're using Scrum, all your stories are getting, story level issue types are getting added to sprints. And so those sprints are associated with dates. When you create a sprint in Jira, so you probably are aware, you have to define a start and an end date. So by clicking, suddenly I start seeing what I describe as candy cane bars. So, I call them candy canes because they have this candy cane-like picturing versus a solid blue line. And what that is telling me, based on experience, is that it's rolling up. This candy cane bar is blue, telling me that the epic and the objects underneath, many of them are in the progress state, which is the blue category. And it provides me with these bubbles to the left and to the right. And those bubbles actually are very useful. They represent dependencies. So to the left, there are dependencies that are impacting my team. And those bubbles to my right represent dependencies that are impacting a team downstream that I'm impacting with my efforts. And by clicking on the bubbles, actually, you can see what those dependencies are, who owns them, what type of dependency it is, and any lead time related issues. I will go a little bit more into dependencies shortly, but just notice that you have a lot of information that is presented here at a glance. Again, I'm going to apply my release fixed version. I'm going to focus on this one team for the upcoming release. And so the meaningful part here is that I can not only customize my time horizon, so I'm going to tell it, show me all the way into October, or you could do it by quarter. And now I can see where are we at with the features. This is today. This tells me how much time do I have to run to my release fixed version. And it also tells me at a glance that not only I have one feature that is done, which is green, but there are features where there's no activity occurring at all. So as in the case of OCT4, notice that there is not a Gantt chart bar view. That tells me that there's actually the artifacts that are associated with that. The stories issue type level artifacts are not part of any sprint. So we can have conversations early enough about, are we going to be able to do that feature in this release, or should we move it to a different release? Or should we pay attention to it right now and put some effort behind it? So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to then shift your attention to the center. This is what I describe as Microsoft Excel-like functionality, which means I have a collection of columns here in the center, and these columns represents either out-of-the-box fields or custom fields that are found in Jira. And you can modify, in this case, I modify this column here and add the columns that are meaningful for you based on your preference. For example, if in my view, I'm using the due date field, which is a custom field, I can remove it and notice that the due date field is no longer in my end row. But let's say my product management said, no, I want to have the due date field there because I leverage that field when I'm using jar. You can just simply add it. And by drag and dropping the dominoes here in the rank list, it defines where that field shows up in the UI. Very, very flexible in terms of you providing the fields that are meaningful to your audience. So, for example, I should mention that the fields, you can expand and collapse them by just clicking on the header. And some of the fields will have this arrow, which means that they are sortable fields. I can sort that field by my epics by status, or I can just unsort them in the natural form. Some of the fields are editable. In fact, most of them are. So that is, for example, if I have this epic and during the conversation with my team, they forgot to update the workflow in Jira. And they say, oh, no, we're working in OC, it's part of the current sprint. And assuming that there's a bar here that shows that it's part of the sprint, I can then mark it here and say it's in progress. I'm doing that within Jira Advanced Roadmap without having to go to Jira. So there's an integration that occurs between Jira Advanced Roadmap and Jira. And I will talk about how to save that data back in Jira once you're done with a session in Jira Advanced Roadmap. But the theme that I'm trying to illustrate is that some of the fields here that you configure allow you to make updates and modifications that then later on you can send to Jira Advanced Roadmap. This is a very powerful field, which is a progress. There's actually a couple of progress fields. I leverage the progress by issue count. So when you're talking to your directors and VPs, people who are not aware of the details about the project because they're not in the day-to-day operation, but they want to know where are we with the progress. You can, by simply hovering, you can actually start providing them, for example, in this feature sample, I have done, or the team has done 27% of the work, and we're still out with a number of percent on things that are in progress and need to do. So it provides you that quick summary, which I see some people do some magic in Excel trying to come up with that data. Well, no need to. You could do so from here. You could do that from Jira as well, but it's a little bit more hidden away. This is more easy to discover. And from here, you can actually, and I will showcase it shortly, you can embed this view into Confluence, which means that you don't have to be in Jira Advanced Roadmap or in Jira in order to share this data with a wider audience.
Which means you don't have to.
Correct. Then you can you have also the ability to see dependencies just the same way that you see them here in this here view where you see the bubbles. And by the way, these pink bubbles represent that there is a risk with those dependencies. You see some blue bubbles and red bubbles. And those dependencies, in this case, the risk has to do with the lead time. And that's a separate conversation that we can have about what are lead times and how do you leverage them. But notice, most of all, that my dependencies here are across the teams, which is also another very powerful and compelling feature of the tool. My dependencies can be within my team or could be associated with the teams that are working in this project from different organizations that we're collaborating. So you can define the dependencies within JAR by simply just adding dependencies, and it's not really specific to an issue type. So you could have an epic that has a dependency on a story if you want to define that, right? And you can make that story from another team as long as they tell you the name of the story. You can type it, or you can simply just click it from the list and then add that dependency within your advanced roadmap. You also have the ability to see the dependencies in the columns here in the same fashion. Now, you could look at the dependencies in Jira, but again, you have to open this ticket in a separate tab, then do a fishing expedition, go down to the links section, look at the dependencies, and start opening up those dependencies to get some level of status, whereby here, all the information is consolidated in one row. I can just simply click on that chevron and look at the list of dependencies that are coming from various teams and who the owner is. And I can reach out to him or she, say, hey, I'm about to work in this epic. But you are not even starting on this epic and I'm depending on you. It's related, or I'm blocked by you. So what's your time frame here so that I can start mapping those artifacts that are associated with that epic appropriately? So it will not resolve the issues automatically. It will provide enough information to have meaningful conversations across teams during, for example, Scrum meetings. And there's really not restrictions to the number of dependencies that you can call out. So in this case, I have 5 incoming dependencies, meaning I have 5 dependencies or issue types that are blocking me from, or I'm depending by, in order for me to complete my work. And just like that, I can call out dependencies downstream, meaning I have 3 issues that are affecting a team downstream outside of my team or within my team. But there's a correlationship. So this work will block these 2 stories. So they have the right to reach out to me just likewise, or I can reach out to them proactively and tell them it's okay, I'm not going to be able to do that for the next 2 sprints. So plan accordingly. right? So it erases those flags out, and you can actually address any dependencies or map dependencies in both Jira or Jira Advanced Roadmap, likewise. Lastly, I will show in the context of dependencies that there's actually a dependency report that, not suggesting you use it, just want to make you aware that the functionality is there, where you can see the dependencies also in a graph that you can plot out or print out. And it shows the dependencies across the issues and across the teams. So if you have various teams, it will show the lines that correlate to incoming and outgoing. The lines also for incoming and outgoing, I should actually go back. I'm reverting back to my table view. You have the ability, if you're inclined to seeing the spaghetti lines, you could do so in your advanced roadmap as well. And now I'm able to see all the lines of the dependencies together with, again, a list of the outgoing dependencies or incoming dependencies across my issues. So again, lots of great functionality. I personally get dizzy by looking at all the lines. Some people navigate very well with that. And so it's, as a preference, you can choose to use the lines or define the styles as batches and then show me the number of dependencies. And that puts me back in the view where I can see, again, the bubbles with the issues listed, incoming and outgoing. Don't have much more further to go, so I'm just gonna hang on with me, and we get into the QA session. But I will jump into showcasing one of the most meaningful elements that the tool provides you with, which is warnings, risk management. If you are managing this project or product cycle, the tool attempts, and it does it reasonably well, in proactively erasing out warnings. Warnings are showcased in the form of these triangles that have a bang in the center. By clicking on the warnings button up here, it will show you also the warnings that you have, the issues that you have in this project. It gives you an explanation. They're also hyperlinked, so it will show you what those issues are. And these are, again, hyperlinked to Jira. So I can open from here directly into Jira and look at the specific issue type in my Jira project. The nice thing also about the warnings is that by hovering over the warning, it provides you an explanation of what the warning is, and it provides you a suggested solution on how to resolve that warning. So for example, in this case, I know the font is small, but it's telling me that my start and end dates are set beyond the due date. Now, this is a case where my fake PO, which is named Rafael, like me, is using the due date to articulate to engineering, this is a date where I will desire to have this feature done so I can play around with it before we release it to the world. And he also suggests to me how to fix it. So either update the due date or set the dates on or before the due date of this artifact. So I can just simply go to the due date field. And again, because I can update fields directly from within Jira Advanced Roadmap, I can simply just say, oh yeah, let me just set this, instead of August of last year, let me put it in, say, March, or way into the future, by my feature complete milestone. And that eventually, when I refresh this window, it will remove that first error. Now, still has an error because now it's telling me, you know what? You resolved the first issue, but you have children that have issues. So again, the theme here is that it will start flagging out issues that if you're managing this project before you get into any particular meetings, you can start resolving and addressing and managing risks. Now, something that is very powerful as well is that when we are in Jira and we're doing sprint planning, and I'm not suggesting adopt this practice, Some teams do, some teams don't. So I'm not going to suggest what is the right practice here. But I noticed that there's a tendency, especially with teams who are using SAFe, that they want to map out all the stories into the time horizon. God bless their soul. If they want to go through that, then that's fine. And so you could do so from Jira and add the stories to specific sprints. The challenge with this is that when you're in this view in Jira, you don't have the ability to, or you lose perspective as to the milestones that you're trying to hit, like the release milestone or the feature complete milestones, which are represented by fixed versions, unless you have a very good memory. So what happens in your advanced roadmap is that if you're doing sprint planning into the future, and I say, for example, I'll take this story and I say, you know what, based on the conversations that we're having as a team, we're going to be able to do that in sprint number 31st. Right, I'll put it there. And notice what happened to my fixed version. It gave me a warning, and the warning comes in the form of the red dot with the red line. What that is telling me is that I'm going to collapse the view here. In my release, this represents the features. One of my features is breaking the release end date, meaning I'm extending beyond. I will not be able to complete that by the release date. And so proactively, the tool is telling me in advance, this feature needs to be pulled back, or the scope needs to be revised. So in order to discover what the issue is, with Jira Advanced Roadmap, by clicking on the chevron again, expand the view of the issue types, and then identify which one is the issue or issues that are crossing my release date. And then I can have a conversation as a team, say, oh, this story needs to get pulled into an earlier sprint because we need to be done by this release fixed date. Or the decision could be that story can be punted into a next release, into the Q3 release. So let's just move it into an epic that is bound for that other release. Again, you are able to make corrections and decisions based on the information that you see. And so in this instance, my team said, yep, we should be able to accommodate it in sprint 22nd. And by moving it so here, notice that the tool is telling me, okay, this release is not at risk anymore that quickly, right? By having, again, it would not automatically have a resolve for me button, but it provides you the optics to have conversations where you can actually manage execution from an engineering team or design team and manage those release risks. The last thing the two things that I wanted to actually share with you is that notice that I've been clicking here at random and making all kind of changes without any concern about my underlying Jira project. Jira Advanced Roadmap, or JAR, is actually connected to Jira. However, the changes that you do in JAR, they are not auto-save in Jira itself. So you can make what-if scenarios and sort of, for example, let's say as a group, we're here working in what-if scenarios, and we're planning things and moving stories into sprints, into the future, trying to map them correctly. And we go throughout the whole exercise, and we were till 11 o'clock at night. And by 11 o'clock at night, we're drinking whiskey and beer and tequila and happily making all these plans, exploring what-if scenarios. Those changes are then tagged by Jira Advanced Roadmap saying, hey, you have a collection of changes that you have done in this plan, and it keeps track of them in this blue button that I'm hovering in the top right. That's called Review Changes. It keeps a tally of the changes that I made, and by clicking on that, it displays what changes I made, what a specific change in the context of what fields and what values. And it gives you the ability to save the changes to Jira. So it's not until you click on this save changes to Jira, that all those changes will be migrated and replicated to your Jira instances. In the case that this is a plan that is connected with multiple projects, it would then replicate those changes to their respective projects. But likewise, if I realize, oh my gosh, these changes were crazy. I don't know how much whiskey I was drinking the night before when I was making all these changes. And the next morning you come in and you go like, your team is just panicking. You can say, worry not. I was just playing with what if scenarios and I can discard those changes. And what it will do, it will revert back Jira Advanced Roadmap to the original view, discarding all those changes. Now I can discard one or all of the elements, which is something I didn't showcase. But if I were to change a few things, a few dozen things, I'm just going to select two items that I just changed the sprints. I could just choose to say, I want to save this one change or 6 or 7 changes. And this one change that is remaining, it was a mistake of mine. And I'm just going to go ahead and discard it. So you can select one or many things that you want to discard. So you have that ability to select the specific issues that you want to save or discard, not save. It will not, by discarding, it doesn't mean that it's deleting them from Jira. It's just meaning it's not going to sync them. The last element that I wanted to share with you is that another powerful feature that you have, actually, I should mention 2 powerful features, is this give feedback. The product manager I used to work with with Atlassian during the early developments of this tool, his name is Riz. And back then, he was personally looking at the feedback that people provided, and they proactively responded very quickly. I don't know if that has changed, but every time I've given feedback, I'm surprised how quickly I get an email back from the Atlassian team. I haven't given feedback recently, but that's one way that you can actually provide some recommendations as to features or functionalities that you like to see. More powerfully, though, is that this is Confluence, and many of our teams who are using Jira are using Confluence, to share data with a wider audience, right? It allows me to be more verbose. And so in this project page that I have my project status with my project summary. And this it's more verbose, so it allows me to articulate better than I would do in any other way, in plain English or Spanish or any language that you choose. A summary of your project. In this case, my project is in green, it's in progress. I raise up some risks that I want to talk about in my next status meeting with my leadership team. But also, I have the ability to embed my Jira plans into Confluence. And this is a live plan, meaning by live is that the data that is showcased here, including the progress reports, percentile of progression, if you will, is pulling that data at that moment in time from Jira. So you don't have to create a PowerPoint presentation that has some kind of fancy dials that show you progress, but that was a couple of days ago. Things have changed underneath, and so your progress may have changed or will have changed because your engineering team still working underneath. When you're leveraging this view here, you're guaranteed that every time you refresh this page or you access this page, it's going to do a pull. And these elements here, including the timeline views, are going to get pulled to the latest understanding based on the execution from the team. Now, know that this is a read-only. When you embed it into Confluence, it is a read-only page. So if you have a BP who wants to go in here and start changing things around, or if you're talking to your team and now they want to focus their attention into, hey, let's take a look at what's going to happen in Q4. Well, guess what? Without having to go back into Jira, I can just leverage this here tool. And now my view, I'm looking at the features that are defined for the Q4 release without having to recreate anything else new. Now, this is a real-me page, meaning any changes that I do here will not be preserved or saved. So my initial view will always be there with the correct information that I defined this view with. And all it takes is for me to refresh this page, and it will revert back to the original jar view that I had embedded here with the original information. So it'll take a couple of seconds for it to refresh and bring that data back in. So with that said, I have completed not a deep dive, but an extensive. This overview is more about the breadth of different functions as opposed to its depthness into a lot of the functionality. So hopefully you all have questions, and hopefully I can provide some relief to those questions. So let's Jamie, I'll give you the microphone back, and let's see if we have any questions.
Yeah, making sure. So we'll start back with what I think is the first one from Chris. And he asks, is the quarter heading in the NAT section only available in Jira Cloud version?
I'm sorry again, could you repeat it?
The quarter heading in the NAT section, I assume he's referring to the roadmap part, only available in Jira Cloud version.
Oh, Jira Advanced Roadmap is available. No, it's available in the cloud version, and it should be available in the local version as well.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if that's a question. If not, Chris, feel free to open the microphone.
So we have the server view at my work, and we do have the Q3. You just have to change it and stuff. There's like up above, kind of where on yours, there's like timeline and stuff. Mm-hmm. You have to change it in there to show quarters, or you can specify times and everything. Yeah, so you have yours down at the bottom, but ours on the server view is up above.
Yeah. And that's actually, Jenny, that's a great comment. Worthwhile noting is that when you are using the server version of Jira Advanced Roadmap, the latest version is available for both the cloud version and the server version, the local version. It so happens, though, that when companies opt to go into the server version, they don't update as quickly or as often as they do in the cloud. In the cloud, I have no control. Atlassian has a new update, they'll push it up, and the next thing I know is that the UI changed dramatically. The server version UI will be different because it's probably a couple generations old, and it depends on contract agreements between your company and Atlassian. It depends on your Jira admin policies, how frequently they want to update their environment, because that takes a toll. So if you have the server version or the local version, you should have Jira Advanced Roadmap. It may not look the same as the one that you see in the cloud. So that's a great point out, Jenny.
Yeah, definitely. So Bruce wants to know, this was early on in the presentation. It must have been you clicked somewhere to see a calendar, and he's wondering, where did you click again to see that calendar?
The calendar. So
it might have been early on in the presentation.
Is
it Bruce?
If Bruce is online, I mean, the calendars that I'm aware of are associated with date fields. So, for example, here, if I'm a Kanban team, I'm not using Scrums, for example, I might choose to use both in Jira or in Jira Advanced Roadmap the target start, target end dates, or some kind of a start end date field. In Kanban, you're not using sprints, right? So you can choose the date fields in order to define when things are going to start and end. And the calendar will pop up and allows you to select. There's a couple of areas where you'll see the calendar widget popping up. Any due date fields or any date related fields, as well as down here in the custom field where I can define the calendar, the date range that is available whether I want to see the timeline view in weeks, months, quarters, years, or in this case, I can just say, no, I want to customize a certain specific date range. So I can say, for example, here from July of last year to July of this year. Whoops. And that shows me that range.
Thank you.
Hopefully that helps.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. So also, let's see, we have some questions from Joe M. Why do you not suggest we use the dependency report?
I wouldn't, let me correct myself. I don't suggest you don't use it. If you like this view and you can navigate through it, by all means. I mean, it just to some of the teams that I work with, they get lost with information overload when they see a very busy. This is not a very busy project because this is my fake project and it's very restricted in the amount of issues. But in some of the real projects, whenever we see this view, suddenly you see a lot of lines like a mural, which is a separate tool, where you see all this spaghetti of lines flying everywhere, and it just becomes a little bit more heavy optically for people to get a sense. Now, if your team is accustomed and they like it, I mean, the tool provides that feature and functionality. And I would just say, suggesting my personal preference versus versus a practice. That's up to each team to define how they want to use the tool. Does that make sense, Joe?
Thank you. I'm very interested in the dependency view, specifically to automate, some of the things that we try to do in SAFe with that art feature board. I'd love it if it was just automated using the dependencies that are already or should already be in Jira.
Yeah, it will pick up the dependencies from both the native and custom issue types across issues. So they're not really, some people that I work with, they thought, or they're of the thinking, especially when I do these demos, oh, well, it's linking only epics. Like, no, you can link an epic to any other issue type anywhere with, as long as you have visibility within permission within the Jira environments to see the other projects. You can actually link it to that other team that works in Australia that is working on certain features and functionalities, and it's external team to your team. You can connect them, and it will just provide you all that data in Jira, or you could do so here in Jira Advanced Roadmap and create that dependency, and it will sync that data back to Jira as well. Does that help?
So,
okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was going to ask Joe, is that the way you use the dependencies for the automation that you're referring to?
So we're actually not using it now. We have one very advanced team that is using it, and all the other teams are kind of looking at it saying, hey, that's pretty cool. So colleagues of mine and me are on this call specifically to learn more about this tool and see how we might be able to bring it into our shop.
Nice.
Feel free to reach out and connect with me through LinkedIn if you or your colleagues have questions. But I mean, I'm glad that you're taking the moment to take a look at the tool, because I'm not going to say the name of my local client. It's a large client. I don't want to lose them just in case they are here. But they actually were paying a lot of money for external plugin in order to get that view. And when I suggested them, it's like, let's just sit down for 20 minutes and build this view, and suddenly they were like, I can't believe it. So they saved some money, and they just went like, okay, we gotta start using this, and it's fairly straightforward. So I know it looks overwhelming because I share a lot of data, but once we sit down on one-on-ones, it becomes kind of like, oh, this is piece of cake. They become my best friends for 2 hours, and then they never talk to me again.
Yeah, it's interesting. So many people that use Jira aren't aware that Jira Advanced Roadmaps is there because it's not intuitive, right? It's under plans and who's looking there. And But when they
Well,
see it, they're like, "What? This has been there the whole time. I didn't even know this was here." Especially
yeah,
assuming you have the cloud or enterprise version that has
you
your
know,
adventure. But
that's a good point, Jamie. And here's what happens. I'm opening up a second project here from my Rebel team, and notice that there's a timeline offering here, and this is where a lot of people get confused. Timeline is what is used to be called not advanced roadmap, but roadmap. Luckily now they're make the branding a little bit different, but a lot of folks go into timeline, which is also free. This one is actually free. Meaning, if you create a today a Jira account for free, this comes with it. And they look at this and they go like, oh, because the UIs are so similar. Go like, oh, I see Jira Advanced Roadmap, but this is very limited. And indeed, it is. Timeline is kind of cool, but for example, here I cannot combine teams. The ability for me to showcase columns with dependencies is very restrictive. It's a restrictive version just to give you enough of a flavor. But folks that I've spoken with, they play around with this tool and they go like, yeah, let's just go and buy a plugin, which is the case of my client. And then they were not aware that plans and advanced roadmap was one and the same. So to your point, Jamie, yes, it is interesting when people discover that they were evaluating the old tool or the incorrect tool.
Yeah,
So
my
anyways,
mind was certainly blown for sure. First time I heard about this from you, Ralph. So let's see. I think it's been answered, but I'll ask anyway. Joe S., do you still have that question about importing values from? He's wondering, like,
no, I'm actually good with Marco's answer.
Okay, perfect. And let's keep going then. So, another one from Joe M. What if you want to use JAR to make changes, but you don't have the correct permissions at the project level?
Yeah, JAR is based on your credentials. In this case, this ghostly figure here is me. And so if you don't have the credentials, JAR will go by the credentials, the ACLs that you have in the environment. So you have to have access to make changes across teams in the project that you're trying to make the changes into. Otherwise, it will complain. It will just give you an error, and at which point then you have to reach out to that project team admin and say, hey, can you give me the right access for me to save changes?
Yeah, that's a really good answer, because this could be a super dangerous tool if that were not the case.
True.
True. Yes.
And also the nice thing is that even for people who do have appropriate permissions, if they're messing around with it, they do something on accident, you're not committed right away, right? There is a way to reverse what you've done in Jira Advanced Roadmap. So it's relatively safe in the fact that you can go back and restore what was there before and then apply that to Jira, go and update Jira and put everything back where it was.
Correct. There's that safeguard trigger. As opposed as, for example, Jira Line. Jira Line can be configured to autosave. And I see people going to Jira Line and making, Joe, to your point about being a dangerous tool, getting creative, thinking that everything stays in a line, and the next thing they know, they're getting arrows from the engineering team is using the Jira instance underneath. So who's shifting things around? We're ready to burn somebody. It's like, well, in this case, Jira Advanced Roadmap has that review changes function that really, if you click on select changes to Jira, then you know what you're doing, hopefully, and Godspeed. But I believe even then in Jira, it will record the changes under your name in the history of the ticket. And so people will come and hunt me for saving changes, and they know who to hunt at that moment in time.
Yeah. So I don't see any other questions, at least in the chat, unless I missed one. I would say at this point, if anyone has a question that has come up since we started doing Q&A, feel free to take yourself off mute. Just raise your hand, and And take
Don't be
yourself
shy.
off mute. We'll just ask it. We have some time here.
Feel free. Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Jenny has raised her hand.
So I don't really have a question or anything, but I will just state, yes, I've been working with the plan views probably for about 4-5 years, even since before when they called it the roadmap and everything. And I actually have scripts, like it is so useful. Like you can build scripts to pull in. So I have 4 different Scrum teams. And I actually pull in, and we have different work from outside, like IT security, everything. And I have it all the way from like your initiative all the way down, and I pull it in like just their work that's assigned to them. So like if it's under a feature or anything, it'll pull in and show. But you wouldn't believe the stuff that you can do with these plan views. It is amazing and stuff.
Great to hear. And most of all, I mean, it's not free, but it's free. I mean, it's not free in the sense that you have to have Jira Enterprise, but it's there. Yeah, and I compliment the fact that your team is leveraging the tool that is there as opposed as
and we utilize it. Like our company just did a split, so we pulled all the work. Like I went through, built ones for all the work that was just for the SpinCo side, and then our parent co side. So then we weren't getting overwhelmed with too much in one area, so we could just focus on one area. Like you can, I mean, just the plans that you can do and different things you can do. We've used them for BRP. We've used them for several. And it's nice because you can see the full hierarchy, where if you're in a Scrum board, you just see your epics down. And when you have to sit there and try to go through and figure out things, it is hard and stuff. You have to keep link to this one, keep clicking the links. But this, you see the full view of all of your work under one area.
Good call out. Good call out. Along those lines of what Jenny suggested is, in addition to seeing the hierarchy, I also should mention that you also have the ability, and something that since we have a little bit of time, unless anybody has any questions, another thing that I don't speak much about is that
I'll let you. The only question we had is in regard to, is initiative being shown or epic? I mean, as far as I know, is initiative part of the hierarchy, or is it's epic? Epic, then
it's
story,
it's
task,
theme,
right?
Initiative, capability, feature, epic, story, subtask. You could get all the way down.
And the themes is not always consistently available in by default in every environment. Don't ask me why. For example, initiative here, I had to enable it. It was not enabled, and but you could create, to Jenny's point, you could have themes. You could create custom issue types. Like I almost blurred a different client. They wanted to create a container called features, and features is meant to, in plain English, for folks, instead of saying an epic is a feature, no, let's just create an issue type called feature. Is based out of the initiative issue types. And so what that allowed the team to do, and I actually love the outcome of this exercise that we did, is that then the engineering teams were working on the respective Jira projects, right? They were organizing their work on their epics. And then the epics were connected to the feature issue type, which was based out of the initiative issue type. And the importance of that is that the initiative issue type in Jira is the only issue type that I'm aware of that allows you to have a one-to-many relationship, meaning I can have many epics connected to one initiative. So you allow the teams that were working on a feature, that, say, my team owned that feature, but Joe's and Jenny's team are separate teams, separate organizations. They were lending their brain power and resources to build work for that feature. They were able to map out their stories into epics within their Jira projects. And those epics were connected to my feature, which lived in a separate project altogether. And then it created that hierarchy, and the reporting of the progress, it rolled up at the feature level in this case, beautifully. So I could, as long as we agreed on the fixed version that we were going to use to map all the work that was for a specific release, then the stories and epics and features for that release, we were able to track them down using the custom issue types. So yes, you have multiple hierarchies that you can create. They're not defined or restricted only to the native issue types. Any custom issues that you create are supported also within JAR, as far as I am aware.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you only use Epic, then you would only see your Epic. You would only want to go to Epic down. So I was just stating, like, when we do like cross, like the scaled, we were able to pull everything just so it wasn't overwhelming with all the work cluttered into one area.
Super. Beautiful. Thank you for that, Jenny. Jamie, any other questions? Okay.
There was just
I have one question.
Yes.
So how is this related to Jira Align? Because my company uses Jira Align, and we have initiatives, sub-initiatives, and then epics and things like that. So I'm wondering how this software and Jira Align are related.
Well, Jira Align is they're not related. Let me start. I mean, these are two separate products. Jira Align provides some of the functionalities that you see in JAR, plus more. There's just a plethora, but because it's that much powerful in terms of the features and functionalities that it provides, it's also that much complex. There's a learning curve that is associated with Jira Align, in both the integration and the use of Jira Align, and it's not always that seamless. Whereby JAR is part of Jira, so there's really no additional integration that you have to do. If your company is using Jira Align, by all means, Jira Advanced Roadmap, what it allows you to do is Jira Align has its own permissions. Not everybody gets access to it because of licensing issues and cost.
Yeah.
Whereby a client of mine that is using Jira Align that I work with in the banking industry, they use Jira Advanced Roadmap to massage the information that eventually is going to show up in Jira Align, because it's Jira Advanced Roadmap is already in Jira, and everybody who has access to Jira can use it. So they'll massage the optics here, and once they sync those optics with Jira, then Jira Align automatically picks up all that information, and then whatever they do in Jira Align moving forward, like they do some OKR mapping and stuff like that, they'll do that in Jira Align separately. So it does complement without us adding additional costs. And this is the way we looked at it in that environment, is that we relegated this tool to the agilist, right? Engineering managers, Scrum Masters, POs, the teams themselves, if they wanted to use the engineering individual contributor, they'll just use Jira because they don't want to make life complicated. But those folks, they did not, for whatever reason, they did not have access to Jira Align. So they were able to massage a lot of the information here in JAR.
Thank you. That's a really good point. I always had that discontent with the team because they couldn't see the Jira Align stuff.
Yeah, it's very, and one thing I like about JAR is that I can embed the information in Confluence. In Jira Align, last time I used it, I have to be in Jira Align in order to show you the plethora of reports that you have in Jira Align, or take a snapshot picture. But this idea of embedding into Confluence so that folks who do not have access to Jira Align can see the data. In the last instance of Jira Align that I work with, it was non-existent. I gotta tell you, Jira Align there's a lot of maturity that has to occur there in the integration of that product into Jira, into the ecosystem. But hey, I mean, congratulations if you're using the tool effectively. That's great.
So we had a question from Noah. In the summary, how does the team capacity widget work?
In the context of the summary, you mean that's a summary here? That's.
I'm not sure if Noah's still here.
If you scroll down, you're in the right place, Ralph. But if you scroll down in the summary,
go back to summary where you were on the left. Yeah, there you go.
And you scroll down a little bit, there's a capacity widget, team capacity.
Yeah, I honestly have to, this has changed so much since I last used it. I have to spend some times with my Jose Cuervo bottle to understand what the changes are, but know that there is a capacity. That's a great call out, Noah. There's a capacity, but it's really at this not capacity in the context of like Microsoft Project where you're looking at individual resources. It's at the team level capacity and the story points related. If you're overloading the team, meaning the velocity of the team, you're exceeding it. That same capacity, you have it here. If you go into not the summary, but also if you go by this is grayed out right now, but it tells me that if I group by teams or sprints, if I'm using the teams field, which many teams they don't use, they use a component field because the teams field is there in Jira, but it's invisible. You have to ask the admin to make it visible. It will show you the capacity timeline. So in the timeline itself, and so it happens that my timeline is so broad. Let me adjust this for a second so I can showcase this a little bit better or better. And again, I haven't played a lot with this lately. It's gonna, and that's to my demise. I should spend some. Oh, no wonder I'm into 2025. Wow, I'm way into the future. Okay, great. Now you start seeing, for example, here, whereby you are seeing my sprints. And if I adjust, I'm in the wrong screen. I'm clicking happy right now with this topic because I've been trying to wrap my head around it a little bit better. Just gonna go and apply. I'm trying to get to, there's my active sprint is coming into the pictures. And if I have my teams configured correctly, a lot of this is really leveraging the teams field, which a lot of teams do not use, a lot of organizations. But if you were to ask your Jira admin, enable the teams field so that I can create teams, then you can start seeing sprint capacity in the same fashion. Like here you go. I can see for my active sprint that my team velocity in this case is 30 and 30 story points. And Jira will calculate that for you. You don't have to use the spreadsheet anymore. And it will break down. Whoops. It's kind of quirky. It will break down into progress, into things that are in the to-do. Where is that percentile of the commits? It will also break down into the epics that are being affected, not done, the epics that are affected in that sprint. But if I were to get that data in an easier way, if I may showcase, I can just do that by going to I'm going to collapse, and I'm going to go to my filters here, right? And so I'm going to say for my release, I want to show my active sprint. And then what I want to do in the filters as well is show epics to stories. And so what I'm saying here by clicking these things is I just want to see the epics and the story hierarchy for my current release that I'm working for my active sprint, for my teams that are working in the active sprint. So I have the Rebel 2 and the OCT teams in this project. And so notice that there's 4 epics that show grayed out. And the reason why they're grayed out is because at the sprint level, we don't assign epics to sprints. We assign epics to the children of those, like story task, story issue level types. But at the very least, it gives me a list that tells me which features are getting affected in the current sprint by the stories underneath. So notice that the stories are bold, they're not grayed out. So these are the stories that are part of the active sprint. And I didn't have to create a JQL. So it gives me a sense of where are we at with the scope of work that is actually, you see that in the capacity as well, summary, what features are getting affected. And if I want to see capacity based on the individual, which some people want to do that, some engineering managers want to do that. Now I can group by assignee, and because I'm looking at my current release and my active sprint, say I want to restrict this to stories only. Now, so happens that my team is actually based on one person, which is me, right? Now I can actually see the work that is assigned to whomever in my active sprint. And so if I have a team of 7 people, you will see the 7 people and the stories that are assigned to them and the progress that is assigned to them. And then you can see story points that are assigned to them and have a discussion as to, do you think you're going to be able to complete this within the sprint? If not, do you need help from somebody else within the team? Et cetera, et cetera. So this is another way that you can see capacity if you want to detect somebody who is overloaded with too many stories versus somebody who has one story. And that is not to say that that one story is simple to do, but then you can have conversations about, overloading, sharing work across the board within the sprint by just changing the assignee right within Jira Advanced Roadmap.
Oh my goodness. Thanks so much, Ralph. Did I cut you off on that last thing? I just wanted to do a quick time check. We are at time, unfortunately. There's so much more we would love to learn, and I invite you all to come back for the next 2 sessions, one next week and one the week after, same time, same place. So Ralph, out of his kindness, is taking us through a couple more sessions, and it's sort of more role-based, but it doesn't matter. If you're not one of those roles, you'll still learn a lot from these sessions. It's really just about keeping the tool in front of you and seeing all the different things that it does. So I invite you all back, and thank you, Ralph, so much for sharing of your time and knowledge with Scrum Masters of the Universe. This was awesome. Really loved it. And I can tell by the engagement that everyone else as well loved it as well. So we look forward to seeing you again next week.
I hope to see most of you, as you've seen the overview in the next session. Come with those difficult questions about the meaning of life and how do we solve world hunger and all that.
Yeah, because Jira Advanced Roadmaps can solve the meaning of life for you.
No, but we'll attempt it.
It can do laundry. We love it. All right, everyone. On that note, have a great rest of your day, and thank you all for coming.
Good to speak with y'all.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. It was really informative.
Excellent. Thank you, William.
Thank you. See you next week.
See you all next week.